Hi again, it's Andy. This time I'm going to show you how I make a fixed paternoster rig with a single hook, clip down. In the previous video I did, which was to do with the pulley rig using a impact lead. I still use these for the paternosters, but this time I'm going to use an ordinary lead, but with a Imp'y. So I'll show you the Imp'y very shortly and what it does. It clips everything down, but first of all, again, I don't measure anything at all. Oh, excuse me, just had me tea. Don't measure anything at all, so I've probably got about a 2 foot bit of line there. So cut that off. Again, like before, Sakuma. This particular one I'm using is 70 pounds breaking strain. This rig I normally use down on the Chesil in the summer, but also I like to do a cod version rather than a plaice version or flatfish version, for example. So this is just slightly different, but let's go for it. So the end of the line, I actually snip diagonally to allow it to have all the components fitted onto it. So let's start with this sort of rig. I always start from the bottom and work my way upwards. So the Imp'y, clip that on, or tie that on. It's a bit like before, the blood knot or half blood knot. It works for me, which is good. Obviously wet it. Forgot to do one thing. Normally I put the weight on the clip, so probably because I was talking about what the Imp'y clip is. So there we go. So as you can see, that's the Imp'y there. The idea behind the Imp'y is designed. In a minute you'll see the hook goes on that to hold it tight, and then when it hits the water, that flicks up and flicks the hook off. Less expensive than an impact lead. I know that's why a lot of people use them. So this one here again, just don't pull it too tight. Start off by gently pulling it, and then as it starts sliding down, then give it a little bit more. But as you saw, I wet it a few times. Very similar idea as the impact shields or the pulley rig that I showed you earlier. But this one here, where the Imp'y is located, the tag end of the line is across the other side. So if you were to use any elastic, then hopefully that doesn't get caught during the cast. So snip that off. Again, like always, I don't snip it close to the knot, leaving a couple of mil just extra. So this is a fixed paternoster. I like to use what they used to call SRT springs, but Tronics Pro now have brought them out a little bit cheaper than the other ones, which used to be about. Oops. So I prefer to use those. The reason why I cut the line at an angle is to allow the components to fit easily on the line, and more importantly is to allow the spring to fit on the line. So here we go, small bead. The reason why I use a small bead is the spring. If you had a big bead, the spring may go through the whole of the big bead, and then it completely wastes your time making the rig. So that's why I use a slightly smaller bead on this occasion. So small bead, SRT spring, and just thread that on. Another small bead. There we go. So at the moment I've got small bead, SRT spring, which you can see. And then what I do is slightly different swivel than the previous one, because this is carrying my hook length. It's a fixed rig. I don't use crimps. I do my own stop knots, which I'll show you very shortly. But this swivel here, a little bit smaller than the previous one. So as you can see now, it's started to construct. And the idea of the SRT, if I can show you, when it's fixed, I don't want the hook length stretching during the cast, because there is an element of stretch in the line during the cast. So the idea of the SRT is to take up that stretch and then flick off when it hits the water. But that will be fixed very shortly. So I've got bead, small bead, SRT spring, and at the top of the swivel, just an ordinary bead. Pop that through, and then the top of the rig. Again, I always use these size swivels for the top of the rig because I believe in their strength and how good they are. Some people may say they're too big. I don't care. At the end of the day, it works for me. You like yourselves. You find something you like, then use it. So, see what happened there? I didn't push the knot down enough, and as you can see, it's damaged the line. So there's a little bit of damage there. So I'll start that again. Always wet it as well. That feels better. There we go. So this is the beginning of the rig. So now all we've got to do is fix the SRT spring in place. Like I say, I do my own stop knots, and don't know why, but I tend to use 35 pound line. It's up to you. Again, it's up to you. A stop knot is designed to stop a bead in place. If you don't do it too tight, you've got to work at it. But if you don't do it too tight, with a bit of between your forefinger and your thumb, you can actually slide the stop knot up and down. But at the same time, if you do it tight enough, it won't move during the cast. So pop that there. So this is the stop knot that I use. So we have the end of the rig body. Obviously my components are above it because I want it stopping there, and the main line and the 35 pound line. So literally wrap that round 4 or 5 times, and this hand I'm keeping it all in the same position. And then when I get to there, you just see that loop. So with the loop, I pinch that with my forefinger and my thumb, and then I wrap it back around again through the loop about 5, 6 times maybe. So now you can just see the construction of it there. Just going to wet it and gently pulling the two ends together. This is going to make the stop knot gently. So now I've got my knot. That tag end is no more needed. So let's just snip that off. And the other one as well, snip that off. Make sure you cut the right bit. There we go. So there we have it. a stop knot in the line, and now you can see how this is all working. So we've got the SRT there fixed. So now we've got it starting to be constructed. So let's put the line on. So initially, there's no fixed way to do this, but I normally just have a look at the rig, guess roughly how long it's going to be. Remember, because it's a stop knot that you've tied, and if you didn't do it too tight, but tight enough, hopefully we can move it to make it fit the rig. So my hook length is the Amnesia, £40. When I'm place fishing in the summer down the Chesil, I'll scale it right down to 20, 25, something like that, just in case you do get a decent fish. So that's the this is the hook length now going on. But with the hook length, I like to put a bit of tubing, tiny bit of tubing on the end of it, so it basically stands off from the rig a little tiny bit. I used to use quite a bit of tubing actually, but now I use probably about an inch long bit of tubing, silicone tubing. Get it in tackle shops, no problem. And then slide that over. Then what I do is put that tubing the best I can with the tag end in, a little bit fiddly. I can do it. A little bit fiddly. There we go, like so. And then I push it as best I can over the knot and over the swivel. Sometimes it doesn't go all the way over, but we just try and push it down over the knot in a similar sort of way like that. And you can already see that it's standing off. So it's standing off the rig. So only a small thing, but you may want to use it or not. So now I'm getting close to the sort of business end where we tie the hook on. But because I want to use a single hook on this occasion, I'll also do a bait stop and maybe a little, possibly a floating bead or a couple of beads or whatever. So the bait stop I normally put on, which is a sequin. I just choose any bead just for this occasion, a bead. And hook wise, when I'm using these sort of rigs, I tend to use Camazans so the fixed, where are we? The fixed paternoster. I like to use Camazans. Normally something like Camazan short shank, anywhere between a size 4 and probably 3/0, something like that. So let's just tie this on. So don't put it too tight to start with. Gently easing it down, and then tighten it up to finish. So I'm going to leave that tag end again there. I don't know if you can see that. So the tag end there, and let's start trying to construct or put the finishing touches to it. So at this moment in time, I'm about an inch too far on the rig. So hopefully this is where this comes into it, where the sliding stop knot comes into it. hopefully. So I'm going to try and just push it up the line very slightly, which it did. Probably about another ½ inch. Also with the sliding stop knot, you may find if you had a big fish and it took time to come in, the sliding stop knot may slide down to the end of the rig. If you'd crimped it, personally I think crimps damage the line, personally. Who knows, it might snap the rig body, but that's just my thought. So now we've got the whole rig constructed. As you can see at the front end, we've got the SRT, the tubing. When I say the SRT, now what I'm going to do is pretend, if I pull the rig slightly, you can just see the SRT there doing its job. So it's not stretching the hook length, which I don't know if you've ever bought some manufactured rigs where the hook length is fixed and crimped. Sometimes the hooks don't actually fit down onto the clip because they've stretched, whereas this doesn't stretch it. The SRT spring does its job. Now all the way down to the end where we've got the hook on there, obviously tag end like I've shown you before, and then the Imp'y. Very simple. When you cast that out, it hits the water and flicks off. There we go. And then finally, so we put a little bead on there and everything like that. I'm just going to do a very, very quick stop knot for that. So when doing the stop knot, have about, I don't know, 10 to 12 inches of line. Again, construct it, you can do it very quickly. So, like so, wrap it around the line 4 or 5 times, maybe 6 times. And then when you get to the top, that bit goes over the top, through the loop, 5 or 6 times, wet it, gently pulling the stop knot together. Just tidy it up a little bit. And bear in mind the stop knot is to stop your bait sliding up the hook, up the line during a cast. That's why I do that. Because sometimes, I don't know if you've ever experienced when you've put a worm on or something like that, the worm's up the hook, up the line, and not at the business end where you want it to be catching a fish. And then just finishing up. Okay, so there we have it. There we go. So my take on the fixed single hook paternoster with an SRT spring, a little bit of silicone tubing as well. Took me 10 minutes to do. Later on I'll show you another version of this which goes to the loop rig. So it's a very similar setup, but we have an additional hook here, so one up, one down, but I'll show you that on another occasion. Thanks very much.